This is Roger Stone. The holidays are here, and it's the time of year when travel, crowds, and cold weather mean one thing. Everybody's getting sick. And in moments like this, you don't want to rely on the bureaucracy, the nonsense, or the slow-moving medical machine. You want control. You want to be prepared. You want options. That's why I want to tell you about All Family Pharmacy, a company that actually puts you in charge of your health. You can go to allfamilypharmacy.com/stone, place your order online, and a licensed physician reviews it. Once approved, your medication ships directly to your doorstep. Fast, private, and secure. So whether you're looking for ivermectin, antibiotics, or everyday maintenance medications, All Family Pharmacy now has you covered. No waiting rooms, no runaround, no interference. This holiday season, don't gamble with your health or your family's health. Stay prepared, stay protected, stay in control. Visit allfamilypharmacy.com/stone and now save 10% with code STONE10. Take charge of your health because nobody cares about your freedom more than you do.
At IKEA, your dreams can come true. Well, maybe not the ones where you're being chased by a monster. We're talking about kitchen dreams. And there are IKEA products and solutions for all of them. Whether it's a whole new kitchen, a statement glassware set, or just new cutlery. If you got big dreams or small dreams in any size of budget, IKEA can help you bring them to life. Visit IKEA.us/dreamkitchen to learn more. Dream the possibilities.
The Stone Zone. Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Roger Stone Show. As I get ready to head to the White House Christmas party in Washington, D.C., where it is predicted to be 29 degrees, I am grateful to be invited and looking forward to seeing my friend, the president. It's interesting. I was supposed to go to an earlier Christmas party, and the president didn't know that I had not attended, but he said very nice things about me in his public remarks and how long we've been friends. For that, I am grateful. And I should say, he forges ahead, very much like Ronald Reagan, ignoring the panicans and recognizing that his policies, particularly his tax cuts, his regulatory cuts, and his shrewd negotiating to ramp up federal revenues through trade, will ultimately bring food prices even lower than they are now, although they have come down, drive gasoline, which is hitting historic lows, even further down, that once he gets a friendly Federal Reserve majority, he will get an interest rate cut commensurate with the current inflation rate and unemployment rate, which are the things that the Fed is supposed to take into consideration, both of which are lower today than when the Fed cut rates to try to boost Joe Biden's reelection. And it has been now more than 100 days since Tulsi Gabbard finally declassified the long-hidden, long-buried federal documents that demonstrate that Donald Trump was the victim of a coup d'etat, of an interagency attempt to overturn his legal election as president, and they spied on him and cheated to do it. Yet to this day, everybody we know associated with this has yet to be charged, or I should say no one. Speaking of the conspirators being Barack Obama himself, although the constitutionality of prosecuting him there may be some questions about, then Vice President Joe Biden, who would not be immune to prosecution because he was not president at that time, maybe due to it under current law, have to be examined. But John Brennan, the CIA director, the largest orchestrator of the plot, James Comey, who seems to have slipped the punch in Virginia. But that's where we have breaking news today. We now learn that the U.S. attorney in Virginia, Eric Siebert, who was essentially fired by President Donald Trump, had actually agreed 2 weeks before he was fired to allow Daniel Richman, the man to whom James Comey sent classified information to leak, directly contrary to his testimony before Congress, the very crime he is charged with. And they agreed to return Mr. Richman's materials, emails, and so on, that had been seized in a criminal investigation to him. This is absolutely outrageous. So in other words, the prosecutor is caught red-handed bearing the evidence that Comey is trying to fix his case. It is beyond belief. But we also know that Mr. Sieber, although he was appointed by Donald Trump, he was strongly supported by the two Democrat senators, Warner and Tim Kaine. That's bad news right there. He was originally recommended by the governor. And he never disclosed the fact that he had a very material conflict in the James Comey case. That is, that his father-in-law was, as his wife's father, was the godfather to James Comey's daughter. And that this same individual had served as an attorney representing James Comey in his capacity as FBI director. A material conflict of interest that should have been disclosed. But this new evidence that the Comey case is fixed comes on the heel of a stunning, I would say, deconstruction of that case. I mean, first of all, recognize that Comey's case was not dismissed, nor was the case against Letitia James dismissed on the basis of the merits of the evidence against them, both of which is overwhelming. It was dismissed on a technicality that was foisted upon us by essentially four judges, all of whom violated the canon of ethics, all of whom showed bias, hostility, reliance on media sources, actually violating the Constitution and the court rules again and again and again. That would be Judge Michael S. Nachmanoff, Judge Cameron McGowan Curry, Magistrate Judge William Fitzpatrick, and you can now add to that, as my friend Julie Kelly points out, Judge Kolar Kotelly, who agreed to give Daniel Richman, the man who was indeed instructed by James Comey, contrary to his sworn testimony, instructed to leak those documents to the New York Times, gave him the evidence back. This is almost beyond belief. And you have to wonder where the prosecutions are from the Republican Party. President Trump is out there trying to end multiple wars, trying to destroy the narco-terrorists and the Marxists in our hemisphere, ably aided by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who was like a new man, a man who I supported for the Senate when he first ran against former Governor Charlie Crist, who was a political chameleon who ran as both a Republican, Democrat, and an independent, a man who began as describing himself as a Reagan Republican, ended up at the end of his career calling himself an Obama Democrat. He went from being pro-life to being pro-abortion. He went from being a pro-Second Amendment to being for gun control. He was a charming, hard-working politician, but he believed in nothing other than winning and holding public office. And Marco Rubio's politics heretofore have not been mine, in the sense that he was a neocon, Bush Republican. The Bush people greatly resented Marco Rubio's presidential candidacy. I think you have to run when you think your time is, and I think he worked very hard to run for president, but he and Jeb Bush had bad feelings because the Bush people felt that they had made Marco by helping him in that Republican primary with Governor Charlie Crist, who was extraordinarily well funded. But Marco Rubio very wisely kind of grabbed onto the Tea Party label and rode to the U.S. Senate. There's a terrific piece that speaks to this issue of judicial overreach and judicial tyranny, as in the actions of the judges who have dismissed this case against James Comey. And a prosecutor who was actually returning to one of the criminals the evidence that proves the case against Comey is beyond belief. Now you have the fact that Lindsay Halligan, who we were told was an inexperienced lawyer, an insurance lawyer, often mocked as a beauty queen because she was very attractive, when in fact she was she had outstanding academic credentials, had graduated from both college and law school, cum sum laude, had risen to be the managing partner of the civil division of a major Florida law firm specializing in areas of mortgage, housing, and financial fraud. So she understood this case. They determined that her appointment by President Donald Trump was not valid. They are incorrect in that ruling. Trump filled her consistent with the Government Vacancies Act, but as I say, multiple federal judges moved very aggressively to have her declared ineligible. This also voided the case that Lindsay Halligan brought against Letitia James, the New York Attorney General, which is quite interesting because we're told now that Lindsay Halligan, the inexperienced insurance lawyer, which is a smear, did go to a grand jury and did, in fact, secure an indictment based on the evidence. It's a documents case. All the evidence, as my good friend at White Collar Fraud, Sam Antar, points out to me, all the evidence is in the documents. Yet we are expected to believe that the more experienced government prosecutor who replaced Halligan, who were told was selected by the Justice Department, has tried now twice to go to the grand jury, has not been able to secure an indictment. What we were told was that the lawyer selected has not been in a criminal courtroom on any issue since 2011, and that his specialty is civil law. So why he would be the attorney in this case is really quite extraordinary. But the real fundamental question here is, will anyone do anything about it? The House Republicans do not move to impeach or restrict these judges, other than some who have valiantly tried to rein in Judge Boasberg, the D.C. judge who randomly seems to get every case that matters to Donald Trump. Somebody needs to examine whether there's the spin of the so-called wheel in the clerk of the D.C. district courts, because the mathematical odds just defy Judge Boasberg being assigned every single case. The president, if there's any question about his popularity, he went to the Army-Navy game and he dazzled there. Let's see if we can roll. Let's see if we have time to roll the ovation.
We are at the half of America's game, and another great tradition here as President Trump crosses over to the other side of the stadium, ensuring he spends equal time with the midshipmen and the Corps of Cadets. As we welcome everybody to the Geico Halftime Report.
Tell me that Donald Trump isn't popular. I'm Roger Stone, and we'll be right back.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Roger Stone Show. Paul Sperry, in my opinion, is one of the very best investigative reporters out there today, writes often for the New York Post. In this case, has written a terrific piece for Real Clear Investigations, I believe it is. But he shows that the Russian collusion story is even worse than we knew, and that the heart of this, the Steele dossier, and the evidence against Donald Trump was suspect by CIA professionals from the beginning. They knew it had been provided by a former British secret agent. They knew that Hillary Clinton had paid millions for it. They thought correctly it was a fabrication, but neither John Bolton nor Gina Haspel nor Secretary of State warned Donald Trump that this was being formed into a false weapon against him. It is really extraordinary, the digging here that Paul Sperry has done, but there's no question that the professionals provided the information to their superiors who elected not to show it to Trump. John Bolton very specifically was briefed on it and never mentioned it to the president. Mike Pompeo who still to this day pretends to be a Trump supporter, had it and chose not to show it to the president. He was shown a draft but took no action. So with friends like this, who needs enemies? One thing that is missing across the country is truly great Cantonese Chinese food. When I was growing up, living in the country outside Norwalk, Connecticut, on Sunday nights, my parents would take roughly the 50-minute drive from our home to go to a restaurant called The Good Earth that was under kind of right near the bridge in South Norwalk, Connecticut. It was the finest old-style Cantonese Chinese food I have ever had. It was run by a man named Winston Dong, so he's very smiling and wearing a suit. It had extraordinary chicken chow mein, extraordinary egg rolls, terrific Chinese barbecued ribs. You see the difference is Chinese ribs are not grilled, they're baked, so they're marinated in a sugar-based barbecue sauce and then baked, unlike American style or Texas style ribs. Great thick egg rolls the size of your wrist. Those don't exist anyplace today. Great pork fried rice, of course, starting the whole thing off with either wonton or egg drop soup. So I was very saddened to hear this week that Christine Lee's, which is a historic restaurant in South Florida, originally in Sunny Isles, and then later on located at the Hollywood racetrack Gulfstream, has suddenly closed. This was a place where celebrities were seen. Christine Lee had survived a violent mugging in a parking lot in New Jersey. She moved to Sunny Islands Beach, and her place was originally inside the Golden Strand Hotel, then moving to the Thunderbird Resort Motel, and finally going to an address on Collins Avenue. It was the place to go. We're talking about major celebrities, Bob Hope, Steve and Edie, Muhammad Ali, Zsa Zsa Gabor, Arthur Godfrey, Joe Namath, the jockey Eddie Arcaro, Dean Martin. All of them can be seen on the walls with Roger Stone as having eaten there, although some of those photographs looked a little faded. It was one of the last great places in the world where you could have shrimp with lobster sauce. You could have it with either light or dark sauce. It was really extraordinary, and it is a shame. Ultimately, Christine Lee retired. Her daughter, Mary Lee, took over. Mary Lee was a very gracious hostess, a beautiful Chinese woman who was very much ran the restaurant on most nights. Enormously gracious and great woman, but suddenly, without any explanation, it was unfortunately closed. So, great Cantonese Chinese restaurants in South Florida, now a rarity. At the time they flourished here. I'd like to hear where your favorite place is. You can send it to us at AskStone@RogerStoneShow.com.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. The New York Times tells us breathlessly that Secretary of State Marco Rubio, in his hardline anti-communist policy on Venezuela, dreams of taking down the brutal regime in Cuba. This is why I like Marco Rubio. We'll talk about that later, and talk about the problems that Marco Rubio faces, not just in Venezuela, but also now in Honduras and, of course, in Cuba. Also, the Chinese are on the move in all of the CARICOM, the small Caribbean nations. Chinese money and influence is entering almost all of those countries. That is yet another issue Marco Rubio has to deal with. But every once in a while, I like to get on somebody who is a thinker, somebody who kind of gets the big picture, understands the treachery of the deep state, understands the mass media and how it moves, understands the courts and how they cheat. And that's when I go looking for Rod Martin. You can find him at rodmartin.org. He writes the Rod Martin Report. He is a technological genius, an entrepreneur, a venture capitalist, a conservative, an investor, a futurist, a thinker above all, a thinker. If you don't subscribe to the Rod Martin Report, I highly recommend it to you. Rod, thank you for joining us today on The Roger Stone Show.
Great to be here.
Rod, I don't know if you've been able to listen to the show, but I was talking about the tyranny of these federal judges, the continued cover-up of the crimes of Comey, Brennan, Rice, Clapper, Biden, Obama, Mueller, Weissman, and others. Now, stunning news story that CIA Director Gina Haspel, John Durham himself, the special counsel, and John Bolton were all told that the underlying Steele dossier, which was used to frame Trump, was not up to, that had been created, that it had no credibility, but they failed to tell Donald Trump. But you have an amazing piece. I'm just going to lead you into this. It's a deep dive, how the deep state subverts the Constitution and how we beat it. You begin very thoughtfully saying there's no reason so many policies never seem to change no matter who wins an election. Presidents come and go, as you correctly point out. Congress changes hands, yet the machinery of government grinds on untouched, unbothered, largely unaccountable. Federal agents issue thousands of new rules governing everything, including our businesses and our lives. And you say there's a way to fix this. My friend, you have the floor.
Well, I have to say there are 537 federal elected officials. There are just under 5,000 federal political appointees, appointed mostly by the president, Senate confirmable to a large degree. And there are nearly 3 million federal employees actually making and executing policy all day, every day. So, of course, nothing really changes. Those people are careerists. They're there for the long haul. And this is all by design. This began in the Roosevelt administration, Franklin, not Teddy. And for 90 years, we have had the results of that, which are, plain and simple, a shadow one-party government. And that, too, was by design. Roosevelt didn't mind having independent agencies. He thought Humphrey's executor, which was just argued before the Supreme Court on Monday, he thought Humphrey's executor was rightly decided in 1935. Why would he care? Because he was creating all these agencies and he was staffing them entirely with Democrats. And then those people hire their successors. So we've had this shadow government, this deep state, for most of a century, nearly an entire century, and we're starting to chip away at it. And the only man who has ever meaningfully chipped away at it is, in fact, Donald Trump. So thank you, Roger, for encouraging him to run for president, because he turns out to be one of the most consequential presidents of all time.
He's a phenomenon. He's a force of nature. He's his own man. I'm a supporter of Susie Wiles. I have known her for 25 years. She takes some heat from many, sometimes taking the blame for things that are not her fault or that she's not responsible for, other times for assorted jealousies. But I think she does an amazing job for this president. This president trusts her. I've known her for 25 years. She and I did the Reagan campaign together. She worked for Jack Kemp against George H.W. Bush. She worked for Donald Trump rather than working for Jeb Bush or Marco Rubio, both of whom tried to hire her. She very ably guided Rick Scott, an outsider, to the U.S. Senate. She extraordinarily was able to land the Ron DeSantis ship, despite the fact that he was a terrible candidate who wouldn't look people in the eyes and would not seek to learn anything about state issues. So how do we take on this model? Because you're right, Harry Truman signs the CIA into law in he dissolves the OSS, the original surveillance system, intelligence system. He does away with the OSS, and in 1947, he signs into law the existence of the CIA. By 1963, when Kennedy is assassinated, he actually writes an op-ed piece for the Washington Post. This is a former president of the United States that says that he now realizes that the agency has gone rogue, essentially, and that he should never have signed into law, and that they're violating their international only charter, meaning they're operating politically and as spies and to undermine the government in our own country. So that is not been revealed. How do we fix this, Rod? How do we fix it?
Well, you've just laid out the key point, which is that it's multifaceted. There are so many different details to it that most people just, their eyes glaze over. They just can't keep up with it. Donald Trump is not that guy. He is shockingly capable of seeing all of the pieces on the board. So one of the things that we have to do immediately is the Supreme Court needs to overturn Humphrey's executor, which of course created this abomination, this absolutely unconstitutional monster of independent agencies. There is no such creature in our system. You have an elected legislature. You have an elected executive. You have an appointed judiciary that is confirmed by an elected legislature after being appointed by an elected president. All of these things exist. An independent agency is an attempt to reestablish the kind of aristocracy we had a revolution against. It's just horrifying. And you heard Justice Brown sit up there and say at length that she did not think that we should have any ability through elected office holders to remove PhDs and engineers and experts of various sorts from the government, that they had to be left alone to act. Well, fortunately, I'm pretty sure there are 6 votes against that position, but she's saying that there should be an aristocracy created by leftist-controlled institutions like Harvard and Stanford who mint supposedly expert people, certainly credentialed people, and then they go into government and they rule us for our own good. That's just horrifying. So getting rid of Humphrey's executor is a big step forward. It allows the president to actually hire and fire. That's a very, very big deal. The president can't possibly exercise executive power if he can't hire and fire. And once he can, he's in a position to start reining in that bureaucracy. So that's one thing. But you're right to point out the surveillance state. This has been just off the chart, and it's multivariate also. We saw that when Elon and the president shut down USAID. The week that USAID shut down, Politico missed payroll for the only time in its history. That's not an accident. They have been funneling money through these various agencies to influence American politics for a very long time, as you know better than most. And the truth of the matter is, if you train an intelligence apparatus to overthrow governments, you shouldn't be surprised when they come do it at home.
Yeah, it is. There's no question that Dwight Eisenhower was right when he left power. He tried to warn us about the accumulated power of the military-industrial complex, what we would now see as the deep state. This is unelected bureaucrats and academics and others who run our agencies of government, are deeply embedded in the Justice Department, in the Department of War, in the State Department particularly, but in all facets of government, who answer to no one, particularly in our judiciary. And I think these are the people who ultimately, as you know, I believe they orchestrated the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, because he stood in the way of the New World Order and record war profits. And he was actually looking for ways to make peace and not go to war with Russia and Cuba. I believe these are the same people who took Richard Nixon out when he threatened to rein in the power of the national security apparatus. And now, yet again, no one in our current Justice Department, no one in the Republican majority in the Senate, and no one in the House will do anything about it. It is really extraordinary. And if you look at the swiftness in which I was charged, and General Flynn was charged, and Donald Trump was charged, all on fabricated evidence and on false politically motivated premises, and you see the outrage that's in the declassified documents valiantly released by Tulsi Gabbard, and several tranches of them, you see a very deep conspiracy and the admission of a coup d'etat. Yet, will any of these people be held accountable? Rod, your view?
Well, I understand that Tulsi is needed at DNI, but there are days when I wish she were the Attorney General, because she clearly nailed it, and she said it in no uncertain terms, no pulling punches. This was an attempted coup. It was ultimately successful in the course of 2020, but the idea was to force him either to resign or be impeached in the first 6 months. And they hamstrung his presidency. Only someone with the tenacity of Donald Trump, and I don't know of any others, could have possibly survived what they did to him in 2017 and after. And so, I don't know why the Justice Department is moving as slowly as it is on some of these cases. I do understand some of the problems they're up against, as we saw in the Eastern District of Virginia with the 2 indictments that have been messed with by a liberal Clinton appointee judge. But some of this stuff can be addressed if Kash Patel is successful in bringing this grand conspiracy case against everybody who was involved in that coup attempt. That is really the game changer if they can bring it to a head, because that should be tried in the Southern District of Florida. That gives them venue where they can get a decent judge, they can get an impartial jury, and they can actually breach the statute of limitations wall and get back to some of the worst crimes that took place, especially in 2016. All of that is beyond the ability to act upon in Northern Virginia or in the District of Columbia. But this grand conspiracy theory is actually quite impressive. It's a good bit of legal work. And I hope that Kash is able to bring it to fruition.
I think it is crucial because there is one continuing conspiracy born in the White House, used to create the Russian collusion hoax, deeply involved in the fraud of the 2020 election, also the author of 2 phony impeachments, later the architects of the Jack Smith witch hunt, as well as the Mueller witch hunt, an extra-constitutional exercise called Arctic Frost, which we'll talk about when we come back. You're absolutely right. We'll be back with Rod Martin. Get him over at rodmartin.org. He is a thinker and a gentleman and scholar, but above all, he loves justice. We'll be right back.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Roger Stone Show. Later in the show, former Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez, viciously framed by the Biden Justice Department, wrongfully convicted as a drug trafficker in a politically motivated hit and an extraordinarily flimsy case, joins us to talk about why he both deserved his pardon and what the forces now of repression are trying to do in Honduras. But Rod, I want to go to a larger issue. The president said during the campaign that he would end the war between Russia and Ukraine quickly. That has proved elusive. As you know, you have to play three-card Monte here. There's the Russians, there's the Ukraine, and then there's NATO. Break this down for us, please.
The biggest problem in coming to a peace deal in Russia is that Putin overpromised very badly to his own oligarchs. And as long as he's still in the war, he has a chance at victory, which keeps him moderately safe in the Kremlin. But at some point, he has to admit that he was defeated. And the truth is, he was defeated. There's no escaping. He was trying to take Kiev in 3 days. He was trying to capture the country and bring about regime change to reverse the color revolution in 2014, and all of that has failed. And they haven't been able to meaningfully move the front line all of this year. It's just an awful war of attrition. It's killing all these people, but Putin is worried about him getting killed. So Donald Trump has to craft a deal that is sufficiently attractive to all the parties involved, including the individual parties, to be able to bring this to a successful conclusion. I do believe he will. I believe it's in the interest of both countries to come to a peace. We just have to find the terms that make that possible. And the chief among those has to be meaningful security guarantees for Ukraine, short of allowing it into NATO, because from the Russian perspective, if it's a member of NATO, that effectively puts a German army in Kharkov, 2 days march from Red Square. That reverses the outcome of World War II. They will never accept it.
Yes, and it would be a violation of the Budapest Memorandum, which was signed on behalf of the United States by Secretary of State James A. Baker, signing for George H.W. Bush, and the later Minsk Accords, both of which we agreed not to push Ukraine into NATO, which, of course, is what Joe Biden has ultimately done. That has long been the plan. That said, time is running out for Zelensky. $100 million scandal by one of his closest aides. We both know this scratches the surface and the enormous grifting that's gone on with federal funds. Much of those funds do return to the United States and go into the hands of the defense contractors for whom war is good. Creating some jobs here, but a lot of money here for people who sell bombs. But if you believe Elon Musk, Congressman Tim Burchett, some of those funds have also made their way back into the pockets of political leaders in the Congress who have supported these multi-million-dollar gambits. Do you think, Rod, that we haven't seen documentation of that? Do you think that is a possibility?
I think it's a very strong possibility. There's no good excuse for Hunter Biden to be on the board of Burisma. That's just nonsense. Good point. Absolutely no qualifications for that. Why would you go to another country across an ocean to pick a guy who, just happens to be the son of the guy you think might be president someday? And, we've got countless examples like that in American political life, principally on the left, but some of our rhinos too, where the children have some lucrative financial deal either with the Ukrainians or with the Chinese communists. And Peter Schweitzer has done a great job of lining that out in one or two of his books. He'd be a good interview too. But this is just a real problem we're facing, and I think it's part of what you're going to see when you talk to Juan Orlando, because the truth is the Democrats are in bed with the cartels too.
It is a massive problem we're going to talk about when we get back. Folks, Rod Martin, entrepreneur, thinker, conservative, gentleman, an expert on technology, biotech, aerospace, energy. Go to rodmartin.org and subscribe now. We'll be right back.
Thanks for listening to The Stone Zone with Roger Stone. You can hear The Stone Zone with Roger Stone weeknights at 8 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
Listen to this podcast now
On the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Idea Gen Global Podcast with George Safakis.
I'm George Safakis. In a world overflowing with noise, there is one forum where the world's smartest voices connect, where visionaries sit at the same table as innovators, and great minds don't just talk, they act.
Download all of Red Apple Media's podcasts right now through your favorite podcast platform.